Welcome to the Building a Bulletproof Back podcast. As a physio, I'm on a mission to reduce the back pain epidemic. These conversations that you're about to listen to with leading edge teachers and back pain sufferers is my attempt to evolve the mainstream medical approach to treating stubborn back pain. You see, I firmly believe that building a bulletproof back requires mental, physical, and emotional strategy. Let's see what pearls of wisdom we can share with you today. Thanks for listening and thanks for being here. Okay, welcome. This episode of Building Bulletproof Backs, I've got Muriel, or Mumu. I like to call Mumu. It's much easier than your full name. Mumu and I crossed paths many years ago. She was running a Pilates studio in Margaret River, where I live, and I happened to be walking past the studio one day and saw a for lease sign, and on a whim went in and asked her what was going on. And anyway, long story short, we ended up working in the same space together, and I recall feeling very amazed by what she knew. Also inadequate by what she knew, and also feeling quite blessed that I could observe and watch and learn from someone who knew a lot more about the fascial system than I had been exposed to. And I think we developed a mutual professional respect that has formed into a friendship. And I hardly ever see this lady now because she's flitting around the world sharing what she knows and teaching it on a world stage. But she's back in Margaret River and she gets to join me in my space. And I will let Mumu introduce herself to you all.
Thank you. I feel equally blessed that our paths have crossed because I learned as much the other way around through manual therapy with you and having many good conversations going down rabbit holes.
Yes.
So like Marion said, my name is Muriel, which most people find a tongue twist. Therefore, they call me Mumu. So you take your pick. I grew up in the Swiss Alps and I pretty much learned skiing the same way I learned walking. I can't remember learning how to ski. From there, it went on into hiking, whitewater kayaking, and dancing. Actually, dancing came way before whitewater kayaking. But as you can see, there was always a lot of movement in my life. I didn't take it for granted. It was just something we did as a family. I did as a person, and I always loved it. And reflecting, though, when Marion asked me to talk today, is I did take for granted that I'm just able. You know, I'm not specifically talented at dance or skiing or whitewater kayaking or all these things that I did, but I was very able, you know, as a normal person. I was just very able at it, and I took it for granted, that's for sure. And a very long story short, at 16, I jumped off a 50-meter cliff into water, and I am scared of heights. So this was this big thing that I'm going to do this. So I did, but halfway going down, I just wanted to literally get out of my body. So by the time I did hit the water, I wasn't in the perfect position that you're supposed to be when you jump that far down. And my feet straight away gave away, and it took all the pressure up my coccyx and was paralyzed or numb for at least 2 to 3 minutes, just coming up, being in extreme shock. You know, this one split second of, I overcame this. And the reality hitting in, I can't feel my legs. And my friend across on the rock, seeing my face, just going, what is wrong? I had life jacket and everything. So I was fine, but I was super scared. So I think you say it in English as well. In German, you say that it sits within your bones. So actually it sits within your fascial system. Not saying it doesn't sit within your bones as well, but I didn't realize of how much that actually did take a hold in my fascial memory. So as a teenager, as you do, you know, you're in extreme pain for a week or so, you get over it, and you just keep on going. And I saw physio for a few times, and, you know, that sort of helped. And on I went, and went a lot stronger, a lot more into dancing, didn't have any repercussions. From there, as a 17-year-old, I went to the Alps in Nepal, and I really, really tested my body in trekking up 5,500 meters and with carrying a backpack and stuff. And again, I just took my body for, it was this thing that I moved. And it was amazing of realizing on how capable I was, even when I had 39-degree fever, of, what my body is capable of. But I still didn't get it at the time. I just really drove my body hard. And from there, I went into, I started training for dancing, and eventually got into a dance school, and a very holistic dance school in London. We had to do Pilates and yoga as well. We had to do Pilates, and if we chose, we could also do yoga.
What sort of dance was it?
It was contemporary dance.
Okay, yeah.
So we did have to do ballet, but it was contemporary dance, and we were fortunate that we had lab analysis, which some of it is more like, you explore embryological movement.
Yeah, that sounds good. Interwomb movements, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we had a massive array of different dance styles and different teachers. So some very old school, but some were 25 or 27-year-old. So they looked at movement in a much more holistic way. So I think we were extremely fortunate. And I am 100% convinced, because I did Pilates 3 times a week, I never had an injury. At the time, I didn't know that, but I am a fascial temple dancer, which means my internal...
a fascial temple dancer.
Yeah.
So, I've never heard that term before.
So either you're a temple dancer or a Viking. There are these 2 terms that are out there that Robert Schleip and Tom Myers, I think, they just, had this discussion and talked about it. And I think Tom wrote in it, it's in the yoga journal. So he wrote an interview about it or something. So if I would have known that earlier in my life, it would have changed my life. And I will get back to what that means. But, or I can tell you now what it means. It's in extremely simple terms. If we think of this, this sweater, this is a little bit more temple dancers like sweater. So it doesn't have that much tension. It has some tension and it has some integrity, but it doesn't have as much tension as, for instance, a Viking's fascial has. It's a predisposition. They suggest that you're born with a predisposition. I don't think it's proven yet.
So you're saying a predisposition in your fascial qualities.
Yeah. In your, it's like how
extensible,
tensile it is by nature.
Right, yes.
The good news is you can train it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So because I did, Pilates focused quite a bit on stabilization as well. So as a temple dancer, you might have a little bit, I'm not hypermobile, but I do have a bit of a laxity in that sense within the tissue inherently.
Yeah.
So by doing that, it just kept me balanced and it kept me fine. But then from there, I also, qualified as a Pilates instructor, like the most basic Pilates training that was out there. But
and was that because you were enjoying the method, or intellectually, or because you enjoyed how you made your body feel? What was the initial spark in this body of work called Pilates?
It made me a lot more able as a dancer.
Okay.
And at the time, because I wasn't taught to think for myself when I did that little course, more as in like I was just parroting.
Yes.
But what it did, the way certain things, I suddenly had more strengths in certain areas, not realizing that because it worked on having more dynamic stability. But at the time, I couldn't comprehend that.
No.
And that made a very big difference. And I think that's why I was drawn to it.
Okay.
And maybe because it had a very clear structure, I think at the time I would have been drawn to that as well.
Got you. Yeah, that's a good point that you make I only had that conversation with that previous client about, we were discussing the difference between Pilates and Feldenkrais. And on the spectrum, I see them as one end, diversely opposite in a lot of things. Their philosophy, one's rigid, one's open-ended and curious, one's playful, one's doctrinated. Not always, but we're generalising. But I can see that at certain stages of our lives, one method will be where you're at. You know, you might need that rigidity and you might need to be told how to do a certain movement a certain way. That might just be where you're at. And then as I see progressing beyond that as having the confidence in your body to explore, to be playful, to be curious, but maybe you can never reach that curiosity of exploring your movements, you know, if you don't disable the fear of all directions, which is something that Pilates might bring to the table. It might help you get confidence into knowing, you know, which directions actually feel safe and secure, or not even exploring your directions, just finding center and finding stability in one place in the middle. But I'm digressing. So go back to...
Can I just say one sentence to this?
Yeah.
And I've never, ever thought of it like that, but the contemporary dance and what we were explored, and one of my main topics was actually choreography, because you're constantly being pushed, and that's out of my comfort zone. I know these days. You know, at the time I didn't, but I was constantly being pushed out of my comfort zone.
So going back to Pilates,
but I think it was a bit like a respite. It was like, oh, okay. Not that I would have put it that way in those, but you know,
it was the constant that you were familiar with and you knew.
Yeah, and it just gave me a sense of like, ooh, I wasn't being pushed, or you know, like it was, And so with it, it gave me a sense of stability and knowing to then feel more able when I was more pushed. I guess, to a degree.
Yeah. And so how did your career build from there? So you're teaching Pilates, you're a dancer. Any back pain at that stage, or had you pretty much worked your way through that?
I had when I was in London, I had no back pain at all, ever. Because of what I'm going to say, where I want to elaborate a little bit later on, is I do think our body has its own intellect and intelligence, and I know we share some thoughts there together. But again, I did not understand or respect that at the time. You know, I was the boss, and this is how my body should behave, and I gave that, and I looked at it as this other entity, and I have changed the word of the body being a vehicle. And my time in Nepal through Buddhism and stuff, that was very much, you know, I see the purpose, but these days it's a vessel that I inhabit. And for me, maybe it's because English isn't my first language, it's something very different. I care for my car. I'm super, like, every 10,000 Ks, like I am to the book, but I do not care if I need to get a car tomorrow, another car. It's just money valued, you know, it's like it's replaceable like that. I don't want that relationship with my body. I want to inhabit this vessel, understand its intelligence, and know that with my consciousness, that's how I'm going to make that's how I'm going to tap into my full potential.
Yes.
So for me, that was, at the time, I definitely just saw it as a vehicle, and I was the driver and I was in charge, and you got to do as I tell you. Yeah. So I had a ballet teacher that I mentally really suffered under, because she never saw any. I know she meant really well, but she only pointed out where we're bad at. And I could hardly hold the ballet bar anymore. I got such a bad gang. And that was just my body going, you're not coping. You know, within 24 hours of being away, having a break, it went away, because I was really worried, because I had to go and waitress to make money to survive for that, and during dance school. And it went one down, oh my God, this is only stress-based. So that sort of, you know, I had a little bit of a glimpse into that. Long story short, I stopped dancing. I met an Aussie, fell in love. From one day to the other, I stopped doing anything. My body went into slight shock.
It would.
A year later, I decided to, you know, like, okay, I want to pursue my dance career. And, you know, maybe instead of trying to find a company straight away in Switzerland, I'll go into another school to see if I can, you know, through there you make your connections and stuff. So I went, just thought my body, you know, it's done it all the time. It'll be fine. Did a tiny bit of, started running again, but really didn't train, and just went hardcore into training again. And then I went mogul skiing and took the exact same, if you know what mogul skiing is, I didn't swallow the mogul and took it up the same leg.
Ow.
And so I had that really strong sensation again, going, oh, okay. But again, you just get over it. The next day in class, I do have to say as well, I was really, really unhappy in that dance school. Every day I compared it to London, and Switzerland at the time was just so behind the eight ball. So it was not holistic. It was not the way the school was run. It was just not for me. And of course, it's wrong that I didn't just grab the opportunity. I just compared it constantly. But I was really unhappy. But I could not admit that to myself, let alone to anyone else, because I was the dancer. This was the thing that I identified with. So was it the mogul skiing only? Was it me being that unhappy? Like really unhappy. But I couldn't dare to fail or admit to myself that I'm that unhappy. So my back has always had my back.
Yeah, I love it. My back's always had my back. Ooh.
And whenever I didn't listen,
there's a T-shirt.
When I had the most acute, back pain or something coming up. And yes, there was a wear and tear there through that left side. It's the way that I always swung into my hip. Yes, it was the weaker side, you could say, in that sense, where I had less tensegrity within the joints. However, it was my ticket out. And it was devastating. I went to rehab. I went back, forth and back. Long story short, I had to stop dancing so I wouldn't lose not feeling that leg.
Yeah.
And one doctor went, fine, we'll just inject you. And at 24, you might not feel your leg anymore, but at least you stood on stage. That's when I went, no way. This is too important. Yes. I want to feel my leg for the rest of my life.
Yes.
Despite if I stand on stage or not.
Yeah.
So I stopped. And then...
Can you remember a sense of relief, though, in having that decision almost made for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was this extreme. I remember going, this is the worst thing. At the same time, I felt an immense relief. And then I was like, in 10 years' time, I will understand why this happened. I know right now I'm just devastated. I can't get it, but there's a reason, and one day I will get it. And it's, what you said. From there, I had a list of what I should never do again. From there, I had an unexpected pregnancy. I rehabilitated myself through that. So I improved. I was in chronic pain, but I still didn't get worse, which normally would indicate that during pregnancy it gets worse and worse because you put so much stress on the body. So that in a way it gave me some trust within myself. And so, from there, within 6 months of delivering our daughter, I was a dance teacher again. I skied again. I snowboarded. I went whitewater kayaking. I did all the things that said I should never do. And at the time, I didn't realize that. Only a lot later, because I was very able at these things beforehand. I looked very able to everyone else, and it gave me confidence, and I was able, but I never pushed a line. So I lost so much somatic trust. So even
that's a beautiful word, somatic trust. I love it. That's that, just that. Like I really see what you're saying, that it would be like a marathon runner is comfortable running 40 Ks, but they only ever hold themselves to 10. And they're very capable at that 10, but they're not trusting. There's this whole extra 20, 30 Ks of not knowing, and they keep safe. So you were moving but keeping safe. Yeah, but that's not what we want in life, really, is it? We don't.
Exactly. But at the time, it's like I do have to say something. One of my favorite things in German is the word attitude and posture.
Yes,
it's the same word.
This. Yes.
So if I look, my attitude then was, well, this is what I'm able, and in comparison to what they said I would be able again, I clearly proved them all wrong.
Yeah.
But I still just kept it in that ableness, if that is a thing, that I was known, that I knew.
Yes.
Rather than going, but, maybe there, like you said, there is so much more if I would explore it. But I didn't have that somatic trust, so I kept it safe, and that was also my attitude. And if I look at pictures of my posture then, there was a
reticence,
or to a degree a meekness. I'm not saying that's someone, but like deep within, I didn't get that. I didn't fully understand, or I didn't inhabit myself fully. I also didn't sense myself fully through traumas.
Yeah.
So so then it was the second time where my back really, really, really played up again is when it was like, what are you going to do? Do you seriously want to just be, so I did all these odd jobs as you do as a young mom of 2 kids and having moved country and stuff, we just needed to stay afloat. And I did things that I was good at and I became the manager and this and that, but it was like, I was not happy. This is not what I wanted to do long term. And, my back just didn't stop nudging me. Going like, and every day I had to do something and I would do things to keep the discomfort at bay, but I wasn't discomfort free.
Do you think even at that stage you knew what your back was trying to do for you, or were you labeling it, referring to it, thinking of it as just literally a pain in your butt that won't go away? Or was there a sense that...
No, I had the hunch. I got the hunch.
Okay, cool. It was just a matter of timing and when you could, but it was grumbling enough to keep you mindful that this isn't where you wanted to be.
Yeah.
But it wasn't escalating in a dramatic sense that was forcing you to take action in a new direction yet.
Yeah, it was just that constant, like you said, this constant reminder. And part of it was me taking that leap to get out of my comfort zone. Because these other things that people were like, oh, you're really good at this. I was in my comfort zone. So I did. I just went to the gym and applied, like being really scared, but really hoping I get it. I didn't get it. Within a month, I got a phone call.
Okay.
And they're like, oh, our Pilates instructor is gone. Can you step in? And then I went, what have I done? But this seems to be my thing. I often get this confidence. I apply or I do something and then I go when I like, what? And I have to learn to swim really fast. But getting back to your point, this is, it was after at 21, at the time I thought it's about balance. I wrote down, I want to be teaching teachers once. I want to be able to go so deep into the subject matter to teach lay people, but to also really teach teachers.
Yeah.
And of course, I would have never thought that's how it is going to develop, because at the time I thought it would be in the dance world. But this is where I am at these days.
So tell us where you're at these days.
So I teach for Art Motion Academy, which is a contemporary Pilates school, but also Karin Gurtner, who's one of the co-founders, she wrote or developed Slings My Fascial Training. And this is really this was the biggest turning point in my life, in my career, is as soon as I went back to teaching Pilates, I started training with her in Perth. She's Swiss, but we never met in Switzerland, even though we lived in the same city for quite a few years. And also through the contemporary Pilates. So what you said before about Pilates, I agree, but she gave me such a different spin on everything.
Yeah,
it was like, look at everyone, look at the body, look at the psychosomatic person behind it. And then even when you teach a group class, you still have that in the back of your mind, that it is, the way you feel this morning is going to have an effect the way that we train, or our attitude towards our body, or our training on that day.
And I think the method, or I've seen you teach, and it's not what I would see taught in 80 to 90% of Pilates classes. I know if the industry has evolved much since I was teaching within it, but certainly I wouldn't. Seeing you teach and seeing the slings approach made me realise, like anything, Pilates is not Pilates. Wherever you go, it's going to be taught differently. It's going to be taught by teachers with varying degrees of knowledge. It's going to be taught really badly some places, and it's going to be taught exceptionally well some places. So I think what I would just say, being mindful of the listener in back pain, thinking about Pilates, I always stress, do your research, really know where you're going, and just don't rock up to any old place and jump in and think that that Pilates is your best opportunity. It actually may damage you, or it may be the best thing that you ever learn about your body. But don't judge one experience with Pilates and cast it across all experiences with Pilates, because it is very independent of where you go and who you see, and even what stage of the injury you're in, really. That's my vibe.
Yeah, I think it goes with anything.
It does.
Pilates has bad names here, yoga has bad names there, this and that. And for other people, it's been the game changer, like you said.
Exactly,
I think it's very much, for me personally, sometimes it's maybe also, and, at the beginning, it was like, but this is what it was taught and that's how it has to be. And then Carlin really, she started to go, but you're allowed to question. Like Joseph Pilates was so far ahead of his time. But at the time, it was thought that the spine is straight.
But even Clara, his wife, apparently, he used to train the fit boxers and like he was rigid dancers, and hard and full on. But I think it was actually Clara, his wife, who made a lot of the adaptations on his original moves, because she was the one who recognised that, well, that's great, Joe, but 90% of the people coming here can't do any of these movements. Yep. There needs to be scaled down progression. So, and Corinne is scaling and bringing her own influence to them as well.
Yeah, and I think that for me that was a turning point. I think otherwise I probably wouldn't be teaching anymore.
Yeah.
And then obviously slings, which is only like, in the last in the last 10 years, but really deeply in the last 6 years of understanding more the architecture of fascia and the fascial and muscular collaboration. And by learning more about that and then understanding it within myself of what it means to create more tensile strength for myself has changed everything. When I was teaching in Russia last year or the year before, they were like, but don't you want to be 20 again? I was like, no, thanks. No way. And then I was like, what I'm able to do now, like I don't train the splits anymore, so I can't do the splits. I'm sure if I would train for it, I could. But if I had that tensile strength and that dynamic stability and the way that my skeleton is balanced due to the myofascial balance, oh my God, it would be a different world. I have so much ease and freedom. And
more than you had in your younger days.
Oh my God.
Exactly. And
so much more.
So you're older, but you're moving better than you were and you were a really capable mover in your 20s, but your movement quality now is superior to that, despite all these things that apparently happen to us as we get older. Apparently our bones get more brittle. Apparently we get weaker. Apparently, it goes on. Those are nice. They are the natural tracking of our body with age, but only natural because most people stop stimulating all those parts of their body. If people could understand that stimulating a body will always create an output in it, and if we notice something declining, if we simply stimulate it more, the body can adapt and respond to that stimulus, and therefore we can overcome a lot of the so-called things that happen with aging.
And I think, what you're touching on is like, let's take fascial architecture for example. Like one of the things is it's multidirectional. But, if you don't move it in that way, like, how does the sentence go? Not train it or lose it, but like if you don't
move it, you lose it.
Exactly. So if you don't train in that way, you will lose that multi-direction. Of course, you can't just go, well, it's innately like that by design. Yes, it is. But form follows function, literally. So if you do not train or utilize it in that way, you will change the form, therefore the function.
Yeah.
And so like, understanding these predispositions that we have, but then how to intentionally train them through movement is really what it's changed everything. Like I'm excited to go like, whatever the next 10 years going to bring.
Exactly.
Because I've seen other people just going up.
Yeah, well, the more we learn about a body, the more we learn how to manipulate a body. And manipulation sounds like a strong word, but we could encourage it to respond in new ways, which is a lovely idea. And it all comes back to knowledge, doesn't it? Knowledge of the system and the structure and how it operates. And I think we're learning so much more about the brain and the fascial system and all these emotional bodies and all these other things that when we bring all that knowledge together, it means that we can see the body more as beyond what you were saying as a vehicle. But, you know, I love this idea of embodying this gift that we have, which is our body, and building a relationship with it. And pain is always that invitation to look at that relationship. Do you think it's that simple?
I do I really love Gabor Mate's work. So like I only scratch the surface of it, but I've always, even at 20 already, I was always interested in the psychosomatic. And I did, sometimes I didn't fully dare to look at it because I had an association of wanting to be a dancer. So I needed to get a slap in my face. Yeah. And I'm to this day so very grateful to an osteopath in this town who said at one point, stop coming to me. You have all the tools in your tool belt. Stop looking for others to fix you and tap into your resources. He said it a little bit different, but it was like he slapped me in the face. And it meant, what do you mean? I have to take ownership? Because I was in victimhood.
Were you? You were?
Yeah. Really? I know no one saw it. And I didn't, again, it's this thing I didn't want to tell myself.
Wow.
And I didn't see it at the time.
No.
But in hindsight, it's like, well, to a degree, I was strong, I put this in and, I did. But there was also sometimes this excuse of like, it was a poker card.
Yeah,
that sometimes I did play.
Gotcha. You'd pull it out when it suited you.
Absolutely, not knowingly. And when I had that aha, it was like that slap in the face going like, shit, I have to own this.
Yeah, wow.
And that's also when I realized I was babysitting my clients because I so dearly didn't want them to go through what I went through. But I made them unable to move without me, with every little bit that I was helping them, rather than empowering them and going, I can't fix you. I can never fix anyone. No. I can be the coach on your sideline. I can be your, I can cheer you on. I can give you all the tools, but I can only give you the tools. And with my help, you apply them, but you have to want to own this and to also not, then the next step is of not being judgmental if they don't want to.
Yeah.
And so, I think it took a lot for me to go and step back and go, I know that my intention was empowering them, but I was babysitting them. I was enabling their power. And now the biggest thing is just, how can I empower them?
Well, as you're saying that, I'm thinking it's beyond the movement method. What we're really teaching are movement philosophies. We're teaching people how to approach whatever movement they choose to do. And that's based on basic rules. For me, it's the philosophy of Feldenkrais. If it hurts, find a new way. Acknowledge that it hurts. Explore it, why it might be hurting, but ultimately skirt your way around it and find a new way to sequence that movement. But so those philosophies, therefore, my biggest pet peeve is someone saying, should I do it this way? Am I allowed to do this? Do you think it's okay if I go for a walk? And I have said this multiple times. I don't know. Ask your body. It'll tell you, But when I start hearing too many questions like that from a patient, I'm mindful, man, am I creating, this is the opposite of what I'm trying to create in this person. I want them to have the confidence to answer these questions for themselves. And, that's just another conversation, isn't it? But I think certain movement practices are very specific about how things done, lead a little bit to a person not having confidence that anything they do is right in their bodies. And that I think Pilates, the wrong Pilates teacher can be guilty of. I think they can put that into someone's system so that, I get the people in here all the time, I have been told to tuck my tailbone under, my lordosis is too big, or I've been told I need to turn my knees this way, or I've been told and so this body before me is just stamped with compensations, learned behaviours that it's almost like then we have to go through and unfreeze everything and let it melt and let it find new ways of being. It's not so rigid and structured. And that's been going on since, a child in school being told to stand tall and pull your shoulders back. We have so many learnt behaviours about basic posturing which don't help us. You would see that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that two things. one of my absolute favorite things so Carlin has derived like 12 fascial movement qualities. And if you're interested in that, there's a book that he's written. You can get it on Amazon. It's Slings Essentials. It's amazing if this is where you want to go.
We'll put that. I've seen the cover. Haven't read it. Yeah. I'll put that in the show notes.
But the last one is kinesthetic intelligence. So the first thing that you were talking about is sometimes I think we live in a very disembodied world. There's a big movement. There's so many people these days who are pushing for an embodied, but it's it's what you things that we're taught even in school, sitting so long still, and there's so many things that we have to fit into to be accepted in our society. So kinesthetic intelligence is, proprioceptive finesse, which when I was teaching Pilates, when I learned Pilates at the beginning, I didn't have proprioceptive finesse. It was like the pelvic floor goes on to a 10 or the abdominals go on to a 10. It wasn't like it's a 2, it's a 3, it's a 4. Am I bracing? Am I bracing because I'm actually scared I'm going to hurt my back? Is it based on reality or is it based on something? Yeah. So, how do we coordinate movement? How much do we need to engage when? In extremely simple terms. As you know, this goes further, but just like this is like super simple terms.
We've got to simplify and keep it simple for the person listening there's lots of teachers that hopefully are listening to this, movement therapist as well. But for that person in back pain and they're thinking about 3 steps forward from here.
Yeah, so when you're moving to sometimes go, you're picking up a tissue from the floor. Do you need to brace your back? Hopefully not, but how often? I went always into bracing when it wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
Because back in the very back, there was this, oh my God, this back pain is going to attack me again.
Yeah.
So I had to sensitize myself. So this goes then into interoception, and that's like interoceptive clarity. So you have a sensation and then you have an emotional reaction. But for a moment, can you observe and become aware of your sensation? Because most of the time we just, it just blurs. Can you become aware of the sensation? This is a different sense in my back. I haven't done this for a long time. Marion or Mumu has brought me into this movement. Or is it that the emotion, they're really good, don't get me wrong, I'm all for emotions, but the memory is the emotion hijacks and just goes, high alert, this is bad. Yeah. So then the interoceptive sense it's too sensitized. So it goes on overload in that sense of sensitivity. So then changing that threshold. So just going back to, there's a lot more to it. We don't have time to go into that, but one day we will. It's more like when you're in back pain, to sometimes, if you can, for a moment, you pause and you go, okay, this is a sensation. Now, if I just stay with the sensation for a moment, is it actually alarming? Yes, it's painful. Yes, it's sharp. Yes, it's okay. Or it's like, no, I just haven't sensed this. My back hasn't moved like this for so long, so it's a very different sensation, but it's actually not unsafe, or I'm on the floor. So to be able to become an observer for a moment.
Yes.
So therefore, she called it interoceptive clarity, because you can be aware that you're angry. Let's take a different thing, that you're angry, but you're just going to react. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rather than going, you're clear that you're angry and you're going to observe it before you do something. Yeah.
So you're saying bring that to movement, and particularly painful movements. Pause, become aware, and question the senses. And even that pause and awareness and questioning will give you power, because you can then say, am I reacting from default fear? Am I hijacking and tensing because I fear something's going to happen? Has something bad actually happened? Or is it my anticipated fear response that's creating the tension that creates, then it's a self-perpetuating cycle, isn't it? That's great. I like that. So pause and observe and become aware of the sensations. Yeah, good.
And then the other person who's the pusher, because you have those two that are numb or just no pain, no gain. We've all, most of us who are listening to this have grown up in this no pain, no gain. So then there, you might have to go, is there still ease?
Is there still ease?
Are you range of motion and ease, or like pushing, range of motion, or where you actually have the movement ability today are two very different things. So then for the ones that are, like, no, but I need to, and it needs to hurt, or just, there's a very fine line. For those people, they also have to get interoceptive clarity or proprioceptive finesse. So to really train that kinesthetic intelligence. Are you always, pushing? Can you go, oh, you know what? I only have ease to here. And right now, this is your scope. It doesn't mean it's not going to change. But it's what you to just push against what you said before. Someone says to you, you have collapsed arches. So you superimpose that you have arches. Yeah. Then you're going against, it's like making the knot in the shoelace even more tight. Yeah. Rather than for a moment going, maybe we need to go into this pattern, soften into it, and then come out of it by creating integrity, enough stability, enough tensile strength, or whatever it needs. Yeah. What it is needed there. Yeah. To create more balance. But I think one of the biggest words for me became as well is ease, because with ease then there's also joy. If you have ease in your movement, you have more movement joy. That creates more movement love. That creates more somatic trust. And the jackpot of all things is somatic trust.
I love it.
Once I realized I'm going to go and help my husband put roof sheets on. This movement, if I need to push, no problem. Overhead movement's not easy for me. Yeah. I really do not train it. But to know, I trust myself that my back will not be painful afterwards. But to trust myself to lift something in a weird angle. Yeah. I had lost somatic trust. I did it because we had to move, but I always paid for it. Yeah. But I don't anymore.
So what I want people to understand is that these terms that you're throwing out here, they're not common language in the industry of back pain. What is common is activate your core, fire up your glutes, stretch out your piriformis, lengthen your hamstrings. What I want to see is all that chucked out and these newer terms brought to the table. Movement ease. What's your interoceptive clarity like? What's your mindful awareness of how you're moving like? That's the shift that we need to bring if we're going to have more and more people move in the direction of healing with their backs. And that's what these conversations are about. And the reason you are so good at what you do is because you're using this language. But we need to make this language more commonplace. And it is through discussions like this that people listening hopefully go, wow, I thought getting my back stronger was about doing, six-pack abdominal movements and laying. That's the common myth, or the common myth about back pain. And there's an evolution going on within the teaching community. We're starting to understand these terms and embrace them and feel the benefits of them in our own bodies. And what I want is for people in pain to be exposed to this quicker, sooner, earlier, rather than waiting 10 years to stumble across one person who has this knowledge and they hit the jackpot because they're guided out of what they're in because they found one person who knew stuff that many others didn't. And, so we're chatting with the intention of raising awareness for more and more people that to find a way through back pain. The reason maybe you haven't already is because you haven't had access to these ways of thinking, and hopefully you can start to track them down more. And on that, where can people find more about you?
So in the show notes will be my Facebook page, where I don't have a website these days because I'm linked to too many schools like Art Motion Academy and Anatomy Trains Australia and New Zealand. So you can always look them up as well.
Now, there are some really good movement videos that you're involved in.
Yeah, exactly. On the websites, there will be in the show notes as well.
Good.
And then there is a little link to a free small video that's shared on my Facebook page that Muriel will just share in case you want to, explore that a little bit. I did during COVID because I really used slings, my fascia training at the time, even though I trained it on the mat, and of course I did the physical training, but knowing that it will give me mental stamina and that I can tap into my resourcefulness. Because when it first happened and I was in Europe, there was a panic, there was scarcity, at least that's what I found. There was a lot of scarcity around as well. So I really used my training on the mat to instill calm, groundedness. And I knew that if I feel strong, centered, and balanced within myself, that has a ripple effect on all my emotions. So what you said before, what was my actual point I wanted to get to, is the more we can feel, then we can listen. I couldn't listen. I could coordinate movement very well, but I held the trauma that I was numb. I was numb for years. And yes, I could coordinate movement. Therefore, I felt very able. And it was my husband that said, your body language doesn't match your verbal language. And I was arrogant and I was young and I went, get yourself a freaking handbook on Mumu's body language. That was my exact comeback. I know, I shudder myself. He was on it. Body language doesn't lie. But I did, at the time, I relied on how other people reacted to verbally express myself because I didn't feel myself enough. So, whatever that is, it doesn't have to be intense trauma, but many of us, it could be constant stress that you've gone on numb. So, or if you're in the sympathetic nervous system, you're not interested in sensing, unfortunately. But with it, you miss what you're talking about, this amazing intellect, your gut, brain, heart communication,
intuition
that informs us. And then from there, we make a decision. Is this good? Should I go running today? No, today I shouldn't. But if, you being an athlete, me being a dancer, sometimes we just overrode it with that drive. And these days it's like, no, today I make a decision because it's going to be better for my physical and mental health.
Yes.
Or today I really need to move, even though I don't feel it. I don't feel like it. It's going to have such an impact.
And it's getting to know when to push and all those things. But I think if we're in pain, what you're describing about is the end game with movement as a way to live life, isn't it? It brings so much to our life experience. And this back pain that whatever someone might be sitting in right now could be I always assume it is exactly how it needs to be right now for you to shift something. Take that first step and begin a journey of movement confidence, which then grows to feeling strong, which then grows to feeling empowered in your life, which then goes into performance and joy and pleasure and fully, like you said at the start, fully owning this thing called our body, this beautiful gift that is a body, which makes our life experience ultimately 10 times better. So from where you are now to where you can be is huge, and it's a pathway, and it's been travelled by many. And again, the idea of having the chats is that those that have been on that journey, have learned what they've learned, are now teaching it invariably to others and helping them learn and grow along the way. So thank you for coming on. Thanks for the time. We've probably
Thank you so much.
Exceeded our whatever we proposed or set out to do, but who cares? One final question. Building a bulletproof back or a bulletproof back, what does that mean for you? What is that? What comes to mind when I say that? What does it look like in your mind's eye?
Adequate fascial tension coupled with the right dynamic stability, so strong, flexible muscles, and movement ease.
Movement ease. Great. Good. All right. Summed it up. Brilliant. We're going to put all those little tidbits in the show notes, and I really encourage you. One of the safest, most quality ways to start to learn Pilates, if that's what you choose, would be through Mumu's crew. They brought together a way of moving that really encompasses more than just the mechanical motion. It brings in the embodiment. It brings in the balancing of the fascial lines. It's a beautiful movement discipline all of its own. So go and have a little sample of one of their videos and see if it's something that resonates with you and you might want to pursue more. Great. All right. Well, we're going to be over and out and get on with our days. Thanks for listening. Well, that's a wrap on another episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you could take a second to like the show, share the show with someone you know struggling with back pain, drop us a few comments. It really helps us spread the message globally. And don't forget, for those of you ready to build your own Bulletproof Back, check out my 6-week online course, which is a comprehensive blend of mindset, movement, and emotional strategies designed to help you find some pain relief and then the confidence to get moving freely again. Or for those of you who feel like you might need a bit more customized support, check out my consultation schedule in the show notes. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks again.